We're just more than a week away from the actual 2023 NBA Draft Lottery, so I think it's time to do a pre-lottery mock draft on the channel based on the actual end-of-season lottery odds. Quick disclaimer though, this mock will not necessarily reflect my personal big board or my top 14 player rankings, and instead I'm simply going to make my selections based on who I think would be the right pick for a certain team. So what's good everyone, it's Real Balls here, and by the way, please let me hear your thoughts in the comment section below whether you agree or disagree with my selections, and I'd definitely be happy to read about what you think. So without further ado, let's get to it. With the first pick of the 2023 NBA Draft, I have the Detroit Pistons selecting the obvious choice in 7'4" big man Victor Wembanyama. The Pistons' tanking efforts get rewarded with the best prospect that the NBA has seen over the past couple of decades, as Wembanyama is definitely bound to contribute to this young Detroit team on both ends of the floor right from day one. But what makes his fit with the team even more enticing is the fact that, with Detroit already headlined by their talented guard tandem of Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, Wembanyama won't really have to take on much of the on-ball offensive load early on, as he can simply step in both as a lob threat and as a floor spacer, who would still change the geometry of the court for the Pistons' young playmakers. In addition, Wembanyama's ability to function as a screener and as a short roll passer would also enable him to open up attacking lanes for Ivey and Cunningham in return. But also on the defensive end in Detroit, Wembanyama would immediately be able to slot right into his natural role as a roaming shot blocker and rim protector without really having to guard bulkier and much stronger bigs early on, with Detroit already having a stockpile of other young frontcourt players like Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, and James Wiseman, all of whom could also become realistic frontcourt partners for Wembanyama in the long run. With the second overall pick of the draft, I have the Houston Rockets selecting 6'2" guard Scoot Henderson of the G League Ignite, a lead guard who reminds me of a cross between Russell Westbrook and Dwayne Wade. While the Rockets need an actual lead guard who can create shots both for himself and for others at a high level, and Scoot Henderson is exactly that. With his explosive rim attack and his bag of tricks from the mid-range, Scoot would be able to open up the floor for Jalen Green and Jabari Smith on a night-to-night basis, and you can also easily imagine him and Alperen Şengün alternating to create high-low plays for one another. Well, a lot of critics have stated that his 34% three-point shooting clip is kinda raw, especially for a potential top 2 pick, but personally, I think the numbers suggest that his outside shooting inconsistency could be fixed by better shot selection, as a majority of Scoot's three-point attempts in the G League have come off the bounce, but when he actually shot off the catch, he did drain a highly efficient 43% of all his three-point attempts. And the good thing is, in Houston, I think it would be quite easy to imagine Scoot improving his outside shooting percentages with the additional spacing that Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün's rim pressure would provide for him right from day one. Scoot Henderson to Houston will just be a seamless fit in so many ways, I think. With the third overall pick, I have the San Antonio Spurs selecting 6'9" wing Brandon Miller from Alabama. A lot of people have been overthinking this selection for the Spurs, but I think in today's modern NBA, where positional size and skill has taken over the league, Miller is definitely the right pick this high in the draft. While the Spurs already have a couple of talented two-way wings in Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson, both of whom are around 6'5", but standing 6'9", Brandon Miller is a big wing who would just really open up the floor even more for the Spurs' main playmakers. Miller is already an elite three-point shooter who made more than 38% of his threes on almost 8 attempts per game in college, who can shoot off the bounce, off the catch, or even coming off screens. And while he doesn't have flashy athleticism right from day one, I think he will already be a matchup problem for most NBA guards and forwards because of his deceptive quickness when attacking the rim and his ability to create tough shots off the bounce. Also, the defensive concerns with Miller I think have been overblown, because while he's not a lockdown defender, I love how he uses his size and movement when guarding the perimeter. I just don't see him being a negative defender on this Spurs team. But most importantly, Miller's advanced playmaking ability should immediately enable him to set up guys like Devin Vassell on spot-up situations, as well as Jeremy Sohan and Keldon Johnson when they cut to the basket off the weak side. I think you could just easily plug Brandon Miller into Coach Pop's system while expecting him to really impact winning right from day one. With the fourth overall pick, I have the Charlotte Hornets selecting 6'7" wing Cam Whitmore from Villanova. Well, this is probably my most unconventional pick, but I believe that Cam Whitmore is just a really talented prospect with very few holes in his game, who I think would just be a great fit in Charlotte. Well, with his athleticism, high-level shot making, and physicality on both ends of the floor, I think Whitmore could easily be a 20 to 25 point per game scorer in the NBA. His quick first step for his size has enabled him to become an elite rim finisher in college, while also displaying some tough shot making off the bounce with his step-back three-pointers. But most importantly, I think he's just a really tailor-made fit with LaMelo Ball's playmaking, because Whitmore is an excellent cutter around the basket who shot almost 74% on cuts, and who's also a solid spot-up shooter who's drained 40% of his catch-and-shoot threes in college. Then on defense, I think Whitmore also projects to be able to defend at least positions 1 to 3 in the NBA right away with his ability to switch against guards and even some bigger forwards. And while there are still questions with his playmaking and decision-making with the ball, I think those concerns will be mitigated early on in Charlotte with good decision-making creators like LaMelo, Terry Rozier, and Gordon Hayward playing alongside him. Moving on with pick number 5, I have the Portland Trail Blazers selecting 6'8" big man Jarris Walker. Regardless of whether or not Portland decides to build another playoff team around Damian Lillard, the team has already assembled a collection of young perimeter players like Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, and Matisse Thybulle for the future. So a really talented frontcourt piece in Jarris Walker should be a natural fit with the team. Standing 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan and a 240-pound frame, Walker is already an NBA-ready defender with real DPOY potential who can guard all 5 positions from both the paint and the perimeter. He projects to be a solid shot blocker and rebounder in the long term, and quick fun fact, Walker did box out 39.8% of all rebounding opportunities while in college, which actually ranks first among all 2023 projected first-round picks. And for a Portland team which was the 3rd worst rebounding team in the NBA last season, that kind of physicality will definitely be a welcome addition. Well, on offense, while he's already displayed glimpses of shot-making ability with his floater and hook shot package together with his ability to drain open three-pointers at a high clip, I still think Walker's biggest on-ball strength right now is his playmaking, which is also the main reason why I think you can play him either as a 3, a 4, or even as a small ball 5 in Portland, with the potential of forming a huge frontcourt with Jeremy Grant and Jusuf Nurkic. And with him on the floor, Jeremy Grant could get more leeway as a floor spacer, Jusuf Nurkic could easily pick his spots around the dunker spot, while Jarris Walker could be that connective passing big man alongside everyone else. I'm just really confident that Walker is going to be a very impactful player for this Portland team right from the get-go. With the 6th overall pick, I have the Orlando Magic selecting 6'7" guard Amen Thompson from the Overtime Elite. While Thompson might not look like the best fit here and might not be who Magic fans are expecting, but I think at number 6, his out-of-this-world athleticism, elite playmaking feel, and defensive instincts would just be hard to pass on for the Magic. Well, Amen has been listed as a point guard, but there are obviously concerns about how he will thrive in a half-court setting entering the NBA, but I think that shouldn't be a problem. I don't see him being a lead guard from day one anyway, as I think early on, he'll be more suited functioning as a connective playmaking wing, which I think would actually make him a solid fit alongside this unconventional forward-driven Orlando Magic lineup. With Markelle Fultz holding the ball from the point of attack and with Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner also being solid secondary playmakers, Amen can simply function as a driver out of secondary actions or as an attacker out of closeouts wherein his athleticism would enable him to be effective on the half court even with his underdeveloped jump shot. Then on defense, with Amen's length and instincts, you could immediately expect him to get tons of steals and deflections, plus coming off a rebound, his grab-and-go ability would just enable him to form potentially one of the deadliest fast-break duos in the NBA with Paolo Banchero, who was actually a top 40 transition scorer last season. Moving on, with the 7th overall pick, I have the Indiana Pacers selecting forward Taylor Hendricks. Well, the appeal of selecting Hendricks for Indiana is quite obvious. He's a 6'9" forward who can efficiently knock down shots from deep, who's gonna enter the NBA as a 39% three-point shooter, while also being a sharp defender who constantly moves to the right spots both in the paint and the perimeter, as he averaged 1.7 blocks and almost 1 steal per game in college. Now imagine Indiana having a frontcourt of Hendricks and Miles Turner, both of whom can space the floor, switch in the perimeter, and protect the rim. The Pacers could actually form the most versatile frontcourt in the NBA with this selection. Then on offense, aside from being a good three-point shooter, Hendricks also has solid off-ball instincts, and when you couple that with his explosive leaping ability, you're getting a guy who can finish plays as a cutter around the basket or as a lob threat in the pick and roll at a really high level. Wherever you place him on the court, he would just be an instant passing target for Tyrese Halliburton and Ben Mathurin. And while Hendricks is still in the initial stages of his development as a shot creator, him being a plus-sized athlete who can shoot and defend from all over the court would still project him as a long-term starter for this upstart Indiana Pacers team. With the 8th overall pick, I have the Washington Wizards selecting Kentucky guard Cason Wallace, who's one of my favorite prospects from the 2023 draft. The Wizards obviously need a point guard for the long term, and with this draft position, they'd be very lucky to land Wallace, an NBA-ready lead guard with stable passing, shot-making ability, and I think the best perimeter defense in this draft class. Despite being only 6'4", he plays with a combination of relentless physicality and natural smarts on defense, which enables him to get tons of steals and deflections, especially out of rotations. So between Danny Avdia's excellent point of attack defense and Cason Wallace's switch ability, we just might be looking at a really terrifying defensive wing tandem of the future for the Wizards. Then on offense, Wallace is already a sound playmaker both in the pick and roll and in transition, who's also displayed aggressive and effective finishing ability at the rim, which has enabled him to make 64% of his attempts at the basket. But with Bradley Beal still the team's lead point of attack initiator, I think the clearest role for Wallace in Washington at least early on will be as a floor spacer, and based on his 35% clip on spot-up threes in college, I'm really buying into Wallace being an immediate two-way impact player for the Wizards. With the 9th overall pick, I have the Utah Jazz selecting 6'7" guard Anthony Black from Arkansas. His blend of size, playmaking, and defensive intensity from the guard position, I think makes him a really great fit with this Utah Jazz team who's got room for a young point guard with real two-way upside. Black's most enticing skill right now is his flashy yet sound playmaking both in the half-court and in transition. And the good thing is, even if Utah puts the ball in his hands a lot right from the get-go, it shouldn't be a problem, as Lauri Markkanen is a low-usage all-star who can play off the ball, while Walker Kessler can finish plays by simply acting as a lob threat. Black's rapid decision-making and ability to generate passes out of weird angles would fit right into Utah's offense, which utilizes a lot of off-ball and secondary actions. Well, his three-point shooting is a work in progress, but Black is already a solid downhill scorer who's been able to convert 58% of his shots at the rim in college. So you could also easily imagine him being playable alongside guards like Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson, who could both play the shooting role in the backcourt. Add to that the suffocating point-of-attack defense and the overall switch ability he provides, and Anthony Black should be a high-usage player for this Jazz team who are still trying to figure out their pieces for the future. With the 10th overall pick, I have the Dallas Mavericks selecting 6'7" Ausar Thompson from the Overtime Elite. At this point of the draft, I can see the Mavs choosing to bet on the athleticism, advanced playmaking feel, and the NBA-ready defensive smarts of Ausar Thompson. In a heliocentric Mavs offense that runs around Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, I think Ausar will be able to fit right in as an athletic connector piece with his passing ability right from day one. As a secondary playmaker, he should be able to make solid reads out of the pick and roll or the pick and pop, which plays have always been vital for the Mavs offense. Ausar is also an explosive and smart cutter around the basket, and for a Dallas team who ranked dead last in cuts last season, he should be able to open up a new passing dimension for the Mavs' primary playmakers. Also, Dallas has often experimented with some small ball lineups, placing Dwight Powell or Maxi Kleber at the 5 together with 4 guards, which barely worked. But I think adding Ausar Thompson's versatile two-way skill set in that kind of lineup could be a real difference maker for Dallas. With the 11th overall pick, I have the Orlando Magic selecting 6'8" wing Grady Dick, who has a case as the best overall shooter in this draft class. With this pick, the Magic land a guy who drained more than 40% of his three-point attempts in college, who's also displayed flashes of being able to attack the rim and being able to effectively score off designed cuts around the basket. But I think what even makes him a more tailor-made fit alongside Orlando's multiple playmakers is the fact that Dick is also a good decision-maker who makes quick and timely passes with the ball in his hands. He's going to be another secondary playmaking option alongside Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. Also, I think it will be intriguing to see how he will slot in as a defender alongside Orlando's other big forwards, as I think his defense is actually much better than given credit for. Well, sure, quick guards and wings can blow by him in space, but I think Dick is still a very competitive defender with solid lateral movement and good instincts, especially for a 6'8" guy with a 7-foot wingspan. Overall, he will just be a solid pick here at number 11 for the Magic. With the 12th overall pick, I have the OKC Thunder selecting 6'7" wing Rayon Rupert from the New Zealand Breakers of Australia's NBL. Well, as a Thunder fan, I'm aware that throughout this rebuilding process, OKC has been looking for guys with plus positional size, advanced playmaking feel, ball handling and shot making potential, as well as physicality on defense. And I think Rupert would be able to offer a lot of those things for OKC both in the short and long term. Well, the immediate selling point for Rupert is his physicality on defense, and I even think he has a case as the best point of attack defender from this draft class. His 7'3" wingspan and elite balance enables him to hound ball handlers while getting a lot of steals and deflections at the same time. He will already be able to guard positions 1 to 3 at the NBA level right away, and possibly even bigger forwards once he fills out his frame. And while he's already displayed flashes of driving ability and a smooth pull-up game from the mid-range, with OKC pretty much already having Shea, Josh Giddey, and J-Dub running plays from the point of attack, early on I think Rupert would mostly function as a secondary playmaker coming off the bench or as a cutter out of those weak side actions that OKC loves to run. Well, obviously, the swing skill here is the three-point shooting, as he only shot 25% from deep in the NBL, but I think he isn't as raw from that area as most people make it appear, because first, I think you just can't really evaluate his shot based on the 48 total three-point attempts he took in the NBL while having a limited role on offense. Plus, looking at it, his shot isn't broken at all, and I think he even has a more consistent shot prep and shooting stroke compared to the Thompson twins. So with more shooting reps and with the help of OKC shot doctor Chip England, I think Rupert could easily become a two-way impact player for the Thunder moving forward. With the 13th overall pick, I have the Toronto Raptors selecting 6'8" Siri Sissoko of the G League Ignite. The Raptors front office have had a tendency to draft athletic wing players with positional versatility, and Sissoko exactly fits that description. The only difference is, entering the NBA, Sissoko has already shown potential as an on-ball shot creator, floor spacer, and playmaker. In one way or another, he should be able to help the Raptors in those skill areas which the team needs to improve on. Well, Sissoko is a wing who's got a really wide body, but he actually plays like a guard with his advanced playmaking ability. His off-the-dribble juice and strength also enables him to easily get to the rim while finishing even against physical defenders. I also think he's one of the most underrated defenders from this draft class. He's not a lockdown guy, but he's good at making defensive reads and rotations. In fact, he actually averaged 1.3 steals and 1 block per 70 possessions in the G League. He would fit right into this Toronto team that ranked 3rd in fast break points last season. And lastly, with the 14th pick, I have the New Orleans Pelicans selecting 6'6" Indiana guard Jalen Hood-Schifino. The Pelicans spent much of last season playing CJ McCollum as the team's de facto point guard, and while they still have Dyson Daniels waiting to pop off, I think they could still use a two-way guard with great positional size, advanced shot making, and tough defensive acumen in Jalen Hood-Schifino. And if things work out, he could form a long-term backcourt partnership with Dyson Daniels, which I think could be one of the most versatile two-way backcourts in the entire NBA. On offense, Hood-Schifino can step in right away as a lead playmaker with his advanced pick-and-roll passing, or you can also play him as a two-guard who can create his own pull-up jumpers and scoring looks at the basket. Then on defense, he can lock down ball handlers, but he can also switch against anyone because of his size and physicality. Well, he's definitely got to improve his three-point shooting, especially as a rookie playing with guys like CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson. But in the long run, I'm excited to see how Hood-Schifino could function as part of a two-way Pelicans team alongside guys like Dyson Daniels, Trey Murphy, and Herb Jones. So thank you guys if you've actually made it this far into the video. Please make sure to hit that like button if you did happen to enjoy this mock draft, and also please do consider subscribing to the channel as well for more NBA draft content. Again, this is Real Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.